Hello, friends. Nathan Comarsh coming to you live from Orlando. Orlando is the home of the world's longest running nightly magic dinner show, 365 days a year for 20 years. I'm here with the guy responsible for that, a guy who's offbeat, creative, wild man, original comic vision has made this all happen. Let me give you a quick video peek at his show, and then we're going to bring him in, have a conversation.
Orlando's best kept secret. Not because we wanted it to be a secret. World, meet Tony Brent. The many-faced magician whose magic and comedy will take your breath away. A magic show that has stood the test of time. A splendiferous comedy uniting citizens through impressible laughter. Bring forth your children. Come out of your residence and let the secret be a secret no more.
Tony Brent, it is so good to see you, brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Nathan.
Awesome. It's so great to see you. I mean, I know people see you and immediately they're like, yeah, this is just another magician in that tacky tuxedo and the top hat. You've nailed that really conventional, stereotypical look. I think a lot of people might not. What I love is, so you're somebody who you went from a rural childhood growing up, not surrounded by, big tons of in-person entertainment stuff, to being the star of 20 years in a row, the longest comedy dinner show in the world. I'd love to take us through that. Take us how you got started, where the bug bit, and we'll take it from there. And we hear dogs in the background, which is awesome. We love dogs. We all love dogs. So yeah.
She was gonna put the dogs up, and I said, "Don't bother."
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
3 dogs.
3? Oh, cool. Oh, that's awesome. And you guys have some, it looked like some, not step dogs, but some grand dogs as well over at one point.
We have 3 grand dogs, too. Yeah.
I love it. Cool. Well, let's step back in time to Tennessee. Is that right?
Tennessee, that's right.
Awesome.
Holiday, Tennessee, population 200. 200. Went to the smallest school in the state of Tennessee. School K through 12 was less than 100 kids. I had a graduating class of 7, 5 girls and 2 boys.
So the odds were well in your favor there, senior year in high school.
I still couldn't get a date.
Fair enough. So awesome. So you went from that school of 200 to performing for that entire town, basically twice a night, 7 nights a week. What got you?
Yeah.
What got you into magic? What got you into performing?
Well, the way my mother tells it, there was when I was 7 years old, I had a little diary that I had gotten at school. I don't know if they gave them to the kids or somehow or another. I had this little school diary, and I had written in it that I loved magic.
Oh, cool.
When I in the 2nd grade, and we had this guy named Louis Mitchell was his name, and he was a school show performer, and he traveled all over the South, Tennessee, Mississippi, Arkansas, those areas, and he would swing through once a year, and he did a school show in our gymnasium, and this is pre Just Say No to Drugs time, but he did a show similar to that, Say No to Drugs kind of teen show.
Oh, cool.
But I loved it. I was enamored with him, and I went and checked out the only magic book that they had in our school library. Our school library was probably about the size of my bookcase back there.
Okay. Yeah.
And I checked out the only magic book again and again. And a little side note, about 3 or 4 years ago, I was contacted on Facebook by a lady who bought that book at a yard sale, and it had she saw my name in it, and so she sent it to me. I'll show it to you. You may be familiar with this book. It's Bell's Magic Book.
Oh, cool. I'd never seen that before.
Yeah,
I'd never seen that before.
Yeah, this is it. This is the actual book. She mailed it to me.
That is so cool. That is so cool.
Yeah, and by a random coincidence, she picked it up at a yard sale, and she saw my name in it, and she mentioned it to another lady that I grew up knowing, and she goes, "Oh yeah, he lives in Florida. Look him up."
And they just
So she looked it up.
and the book found itself all the way through. That's awesome. We're learning how to do this live in front of you guys too. We had a comment come in. Carly Chmidlin knows a 7-year-old that sounds just like that. So this is Reed, who's been performing magic. He's 6 or 7. I think he's been to the show a couple times. So that's awesome. So hello, Reed. Hello, Carly. You can see we turn out as sort of normal, somewhat adjusted adults who can function. So despite that, so keep at it, Reed. So awesome. So that sprung the interest in magic. You had the book. What got you to leap from like learning about it, I'm excited about that, this is cool, to I'm actually doing this in front of people?
I did a talent show in another town. The nearby town is still called Camden, Tennessee, which is about halfway between Memphis and Nashville. And I think I was about eight years old, and my parents drove me to the I think it was the middle school, and I didn't audition, I entered the talent contest, and when I got up to do my bit, my act, I was so nervous I couldn't speak. Yeah. So I did it just silently, and I didn't win.
Dude, but there's something to like being that young and being able to adapt like that. Because I know, like, I think me at 8 probably freezes and just doesn't go on, or does something. I don't know what, but like that's such a cool thing that like something in you said, I'm terrified of this. I can't talk, so I'm just gonna do it and experiment and see what happens and have it work, which is cool because I kind of see, seeing your work later on, there's a willingness to experiment. There's a willingness to do stuff that's very out of the mold. Like, it's been maybe the last 5 years that there have been well-known magicians in the public eye with full sleeve tattoos. But I think you were the first person I saw, right? It's that same kind of spirit of like not having to be locked in by what other people expect a magic show to look like or sound like,
Yeah, I've had tattoos for quite a long time, so I might have been the first. I've had some of them for 20 years, about 20 years, so maybe,
Yeah.
I know it originally for a while. Our sales manager used to Photoshop them out.
That's awesome.
So my arms are all bare.
That's awesome.
But that was years ago.
Yeah. I can understand a marketing department being not like, really, we're gonna, yeah. So cool.
We're a family show.
Awesome. Let's see. Yeah, Carly says, haha, somewhat, and she is absolutely right. We are somewhat well adjusted, that's for sure. We'll throw her up there. Oh, cool. We can look at that. That's magic. We can put the comments on the screen. That's awesome there.
So we'll like that.
Yeah. We'll use that more. And if you guys have questions for Tony, if you've seen his show, if you've got questions about whatever's, and we'll get to in a little bit, but I want to mention it now just in case people are just mentioning now. You're going to be back March 13th, March 20th. They're Saturdays at 6 p.m. doing everything you love about the show, but modified to make it safe and fun for people to come out and enjoy while things are still going on. And we'll talk some about that process. But let's back up because so you're 8 years old, you do the talent show. Where does the professional part come in? Like, when did that start? What kind of shows were you doing birthday parties as a teenager, or what kind of What happened there? How'd you?
Yeah, I did my first paid show when I was 12, and it was a birthday party, and I had no idea what to charge, and so I did the show, and I was packing up and to leave because my dad had driven me there, and the guys, and I'm still friends with him, Wayne Holiday, in Holiday's last name's Holiday, came up and gave me $5. So I made $5 for my first show, and this was for kids probably about the same age as I was, you know. And then after that, I started running an ad in the local, the paper that was in Camden. They had a weekly newspaper, and I ran an ad in classifieds.
Okay. We should mention, for those of us who are younger, they used to print out part of the internet, and that was the newspaper, and then there were these ads that you could just run in the back. But that's awesome. It's cool. So you do the birthday party thing. Something eventually brought you out of Holiday, Tennessee. How'd that happen? What?
Let's see. How did that happen? I went to college. I actually, about around the age of 16, I sort of lost interest in magic and became interested in comedy and acting. And so I wanted to go to school and study theater. So when I graduated high school, I went to the University of Tennessee, one of the branches, and studied theater and communications. And I did that and got my degree. And my plan was, I wanted to be in show business. I wanted to be an actor, frankly. But back in those days, and this was in the 80s, pre-internet, and I grew up in this small town, and I didn't know anybody that is in any kind of show business, other than I had an uncle who was a musician. He had a band, and he based out of Memphis. So instead, I just had a string of random jobs and did theater on the side. I was theater, got married in 85, I'm sorry. And we moved to the Nashville area, and I started doing theater. I started doing some commercials, some industrial films, stuff like that. And I actually did a dinner theater in Nashville back in the 80s, but no magic. It was sketch comedy and comedy monologues. And we had like a little theater troupe.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think back to, I know Penn Jillette said this, that he, and I think this is common to people who have these careers where they bring something that's very different to the table in terms of, especially with magic and comedy, is, he was talking about how he'd grow up looking at Lou Reed and looking at Bob Dylan and wanting to be those guys, and he realized that if he was just another musician, which is what he really cared about, who was dressing that way and acting that way and had that aesthetic, it would just be another one of these guys, and he wasn't good enough to rise to the top. But when he took that perspective that came from this slightly off-center thing and he applied it to magic, suddenly there was something that was very, very different that kind of stood out. And I think that shows in your show that your interests are way broader than just like, here's an amazing trick. Like, the magic is really, really amazing, and people are gonna, their jaws drop. There are these incredible moments, but they're gonna spend a heck of a lot of time laughing. They're gonna spend a heck of a lot of time, like, it's just all those skills that you've cultivated that you've put into the show, which is awesome. So we won't have to go through every little line on the resume. I promise, Tony. I promise you. But this room in Orlando that's now been going on for 20 years, which is insane for a public ticketed magic show of any kind, especially for somebody who, remarkable performer, but not a celebrity, not a David Copperfield, not a, it's really, really remarkable. How did the Out of Control Comedy Dinner Show come about?
Well, I we moved to Florida to work for me to work at Disney. I've been touring. I did a touring show in 1999, the early part of '99, for the Fox Family Channel, and I was the host of a traveling show called Fox Family Fest, and we were basically a marketing tour promoting their lineup of. They had brought back the Addams Family. They had the new Addams Family, the new Captain Kangaroo, a show called Teen Wolf, another show with 3 singers. One of them was Fergie, by the way, before she called herself Fergie. Great Pretenders, that was the name of the show.
Oh, cool.
And my job was, I was the host and MC of this traveling show, and some of the stars would come out and we would interact and do shows and play games and those kind of things. And I did a little magic. And to go back to what you said before about having something broader than just magic, I can take every long-running gig I've had and tie it into something that has nothing to do with magic. And the reason I got that gig, frankly, was because I had a background in stand-up comedy and improv. And we were on vacation in Florida, random thing, and I got a call from Fox out in Hollywood, and they said, will you come out and audition for this show? And they flew me out. I was out there for about 2 hours, flew me back. So I went to Nickelodeon Studios, which is where they had their office, and I was met with a room full of producers, including the vice president of Fox at the time, and they basically sat there and threw stuff at me, and I had to improv. And I did a little magic, and they said, let's go to Starbucks. Went to Starbucks, and they offered me the job. And they flew me back to, we were living in Memphis at the time. And I learned later on from one of their marketing people that they had auditioned a bunch of magicians, but nobody could do the improv.
Yeah, which is the crux of the job when you're on TV with a microphone in your hand, and to be able to keep things moving and do something entertaining and bounce off.
Yeah, so I was probably the least talented magician, because I found out some of the people I know they audition, I know are far better than me. But it's one of those things. They saw the need for someone who could be quick-witted and fast on their feet, and not just go into another magic trick.
Right, which when you say more talented as a magician, I mean, I don't know, because and I think this gets to some of the things in your show. Like, there is something very interesting about experiencing something impossible that's happening right here and right now. But there are, frankly, a lot of people who can do that. And so when that's your one thing, it's interesting, but it's interesting up to a point. Like, there's got to be some other something there to make us want to spend time with you and make us want to have something with you. And that's, one of the things about your show is, you've done it so much, all these performances, and it's incredibly tight. It's incredibly well, but you're always, every time I've seen you, at least, I can tell that you're here with us right now. That you're not just like hitting play on the little cassette recorder in your brain and going through the motions. And that's obviously, I'm sure, having to do with this deeper skill set and this deeper background. So that's awesome. So cool. So you had the gig with Fox, promoting stuff around the country and doing improvisational, and that was, you're adding the magic kind of back in there, right? Because that's when you started to do some magic.
And when I was with Fox, I was doing some magic, probably 50-50 maybe, and I was also DJing.
Oh, cool.
Because we had to have live music, and I happened to have been a DJ, and I studied radio and television in college, and I had DJ'd in college, so that was another reason. You know, you layer all these like that, so that was another probably reason why I got the gig, because I had that going. And yeah, I was doing magic, and I had been just gigging it. You know, I had a 2-year run at Circus Casino in the earlier 90s in Tunica, Mississippi.
Okay.
And then that ended. I did a 2-year run in a theme park called Libertyland. And then when that ended, I was just gigging it. You know, I was doing everything.
Yeah.
And that's when Fox called. And then when I was on the road for Fox, I got a call from, there was a period there where I got asked to do the CBS Thanksgiving Day parade. And so, which was actually shot in Nashville.
Okay.
So I went to Nashville, filmed this parade, my spot in it. And my old-time friend who I worked with back in Circus, Danny Devaney, happened to see it. And he gave me a call and said, man, you know, we got to stay in touch. And so we did. And he had already moved down to Florida and was working at Hollywood Studios, which was MGM at the time. And he needed his partner, he was doing a 2-man street. He was a streetmosphere performer. For those of you that don't know, they call them streetmosphere. They're strolling atmospheric entertainment at Hollywood Studios. And his partner was going to go over to Epcot, so they needed to fill a spot, and he wanted to know would I be willing to audition. And my contract with Fox was about to end, and I asked if they would let me take off and fly. I think I was in Oklahoma, but I do think I might have went back home before I flew to Florida. And I flew down to Orlando for one day and auditioned and got it. And they gave me a year contract. And so I finished my tour, and we put the house up for sale, and I came down to Florida for 3 months. I lived with Danny while my wife Mitzi stayed back in Tennessee and sold the house. And so officially they came down December 17th of 99. I think that's right. And I had been here for 3 months, and I was working 6 nights a week at MGM Studios.
Yeah, and that's something because I know this is in some of the groups for performers and stuff like that, and some young performers, and I kind of want to note that like leading into this show, which has given you a huge amount of experience on stage, 20 years, whatever, but you were doing these things that got you in front of real audiences on a really consistent basis. And it just, you know, so I just mention it for the performers, because I've gotten a lot of messages and stuff about how do I get good, how do I do this, and the answer is you do it a lot.
Yeah, it's the flight time. You know, it's another thing. I can't remember the exact quote. You know, Penn and Teller talk about that too. The 10,000 hours or whatever it is that you've got to put out in front of real people.
Yeah.
And I don't mean magicians or peers or whatever. The paying people. It's a different, totally different feeling, totally different vibe, and also can be nerve-wracking. I'll talk about that when we get to the show part, but I've tried to take these other skills and include them in with the magic, but not. It's like it's another part of your toolkit.
It feels like the word I'm kind of leaning on is layers, because your show doesn't feel like I've seen shows where they take a bunch of skills and they just kind of all smash them together, and it's like, here's my juggling piece, and here's my mime piece, and it's like it's integrated throughout. And when you mentioned the DJ thing, like you have a lot of music drops, and I can see that as somebody who's thinking from the perspective of the party DJ, and it all comes together, it all moves, but it's not like here's my juggling thing, here's my balance trick, here's my this, here's my that. Like it comes together really, really nicely. So cool. So you're in Florida. Mitzi's there with you. Your Streetmosphere with Danny Devaney. And somehow you end up in an upside down building on International Drive with unlimited pizza and beer and popcorn.
Well, how that came about was I was trying to pick up some acting gigs on the side. And I don't know if they still have. Do you remember the Green Sheet? Is it called the Green Sheet?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I think it was called the Green Sheet. And I'm guessing it's gone now because it was a weekly newsletter that came in the mail, and it was for all kinds of jobs in show business, and it was based out of Orlando. It was like a regional thing.
Okay.
And I subscribed to it. It's like, you paid something a month and you got it. And I was looking through it, and it had they were looking for a magician for this brand new dinner show that they're going to open inside of this upside down building called Wonderworks. And for those of you who don't know, Wonderworks is an upside down attraction on International Drive, and it has tons of interactive science exhibits, a road course, 4D theater, a lot of state-of-the-art.
Lasers, right? Laser tag?
Laser tag, yeah, we've got laser tag. So I wrote the guy and said I was interested in to talk about it because I was doing MGM, but I had an agent at the time, and I was basically an independent contractor. I was never an employee of Disney. So we were having problems with her with getting paid, basically. And so I was just, keeping my options out there. And so instead of contacting me back, I learned that the producer comes and watches me, and I didn't know he was watching. He watched us do a set. And when I was working the streets with Danny, we were doing 2 bellhop characters. It wasn't like, it wasn't a magic show. Yeah. It was a comedy show that had magic and juggling and all these stunts involving suitcases. We had a what do you call the bellboy rack?
Oh yeah. Luggage cart, yeah.
Luggage cart. We had a luggage cart. We had suitcases. We would do we call it the Suitcase Olympics, which is really a thumb tie routine where we catch bags on our thumbs, handles, bags and stuff. It was a thumb tie routine dressed up as 2 idiots beating up people's luggage.
Boy, has that served you well. Like I feel like the DNA of that is in the other thing that people.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. Yeah. So and we would do a straitjacket routine where it was a challenge, and Danny would put me in a straitjacket and then tie me up to in a chair with 100 feet of rope. And they would have 2 men put him in a straitjacket, and we're racing to see who gets out. And I'm getting out quicker, so he kicks me over onto the pavement, and I'm struggling. And finally, I get out, and he doesn't. He never gets out, and we just walk off set, and that's the end of the routine.
So is he tied to the chair, or is he just tied in and he's walking off with the chair tied to him?
I'm tied to the chair.
Got it.
He's just in the straight. But I get out of the chair and the straitjacket, and he doesn't get out of anything.
Nice.
So so we did that for 8. I've been there 8 months. 8 months out of a year, and the guy. They had hired a producer, and he had written a show for Wonderworks called The Night of Wonder. and they wanted somebody who could act and sing. This is the next reason why I said more than magic. I had done character singing in college, done musicals, and so I had a theater background. And the script was a magician whose assistant is in love with him, but he's oblivious to it. And so she sings, and he sings some too, but he's performing magic, and she's sort of telling this story at the same time. And so they came and they offered me the job, and it was more money. And so I broke my contract with Disney. And Disney, the agent, came to me and said, "Oh no, you'll never work here again. In this town, you'll never work."
And that was your last time doing a magic show in Orlando, right?
Right.
That was the end of it, right there.
Right. So I broke my contract and started the dinner show, and within a couple of months, the agent calls me back and says Disney wants to know if you'll come back and do days. Yeah. And you can do your dinner show at night and we want to put a show in Epcot, and will you do the show?
Did you take them up on that?
Yeah. I wrote it. I said the only reason I'll do it if you let Danny do it with me.
Dude, so how many shows are you doing a week during that period? Because were you guys doing 2 shows at WonderWorks then, or was it just the one, or
2 shows?
2 shows.
2 shows at night. Yeah. So for the next year, I did 4 or 5 shows at Epcot, 4 days a week, and then 2 shows a night, 6 nights a week.
So you've got 12 shows at WonderWorks plus 20 more shows ish.
Yep.
I'm doing math on the fly, guys. So you're around 25 to 30 shows a week. So when we say, kids, that flight time is what makes you good, that's what flight time looks like. That's awesome.
And the shows we did at Epcot were only 28 minutes long. So
it counts.
What's that?
It counts. We put that in the we make that a hash mark in the show count for the flight time for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. So and basically we would come out and do one routine, and it just took 28 minutes to do it. We had so much build up. Everything we would just basically screw around, and we might wind up really just doing one thing, but we did with so much interaction in that show. Because remember this too, and I didn't really explain this. I met Danny at Circus. So we worked together at Circus for 2 years in the early 90s. And back then, I was the only, they had, there was 5 of us. I was the only magician. They had a juggler, and then they had 3 clowns from Ringling Brothers. And Danny was one of the clowns at that time. And so we had been 2 years doing this screwing around stuff with people on a day-to-day basis at a casino. And then when they let us go at the casino because they decided to change the theme from the circus. The circus theme wasn't working in northern Mississippi for a casino. So the parent company that owns Circus owns a bunch of casinos under a bunch of different names. They own the Excalibur, the Luxor, Slots of Fun, Circus, Gold Strike. They had like 9 different brands. And so they rebranded it to Gold Strike, and we were out of a job. And I wound up getting the gig at the theme park, and so I brought Danny in to work with me there. So he and I already had this history of 3 full years, solid years, and then he also did gigs with me. If I booked some corporate gigs, he did those with me, So we already had this history, and we knew what each other was thinking.
And I know we're skipping around here, but do you miss like the difference between working as a duo act and working like yourself?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do miss it, particularly with him,
Yeah.
because it was just, and I've had other work with other guys. I worked with Fred Moore for a year and a half, and then at Wonderworks at one time, we were a two-man show, and I've worked with a ton of great, great guys and ladies there, and so, but with Danny and I, it was a special.
Yeah.
It was that once in a lifetime, that kind of thing, I think, where you just sense what the other person, before they say it, you know what they're going to say.
You were the Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski of Comedy Magic on the.
Yeah, it's. I mean, and I'm sure it was the same way with Abbott and Costello and Marx Brothers, and they knew what the other one was going to do before they did it. They're just so in sync with each other.
Were you guys?
And,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, that was it. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just, so were you guys? We are clearly not in sync with each other on that. Were you guys like? Was one like a high status character and the other like a low status character? Was there like a straight man and a comic foil, or like what was the dynamic like? What was the relationship like on stage?
Danny and I refused to stick to any rules, so our status changed from routine to routine, and just whatever hit us. So one routine, I would be a blithering idiot, and then he would be high status. And then the next time, he's sort of the angry guy, and I'm high status. So we decided we weren't going to stick with any rules.
And you've sort of found a way to keep that, I think, with like a show that has Moses and Jack Nicholson and the plumber, and like you're changing through those high, low, and different character dynamics on stage in front of people.
I'm glad. I appreciate you noticing that, because that is something that plays into what I do, is keeping changing the rhythm and changing the status. I tend to think of myself as a low status compared to the audience, because I never want to come across as aloof or, here's a quarter, disappeared, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So I tend to, when I'm working alone, a lot of the times I consider myself a low status compared to the audience. But I do like to keep sort of an off-balance feel to the show, so that it has highs and lows and valleys and peaks, because I feel like my natural personality is a little bit like, and that doesn't play well in a live show.
Yeah.
I would get bored of myself really fast,
Well,
to paraphrase Jonathan Winters says he always got bored before the audience did.
Oh, I love that. I love
And
that.
that had stuck with me many, many years, because he was a big influence on me as a comedian, and that's what he said. He said, I always get bored first. And I thought, wow, I love that. And so I try to keep that way of thinking in my mind as well. I want to get bored before the audience does.
That's awesome. And just to catch everybody, because he's somebody I think should be more prominent. Jonathan Winters, brilliant improvisational comedian, huge influence on Robin Williams, Tony Brent, remarkable comic. That's awesome.
You look at Robin Williams and you see Jonathan Winters there, and he admitted it, and there's some very nice documentaries. There's one documentary with Jonathan and Robin that's very good. But if you don't know who Jonathan Winters is, go on YouTube and watch some of his old routines, because he was really probably ahead of his time in terms of, he was an solo improv performer. And people, he could do 20 minutes with a stick.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the stick. And I think that's the clip to look up is
Yeah.
Google Jonathan Winter's stick, and it's absolutely incredible, and you see it with Robin as well, and you see it with all of those people, which it's interesting because I was talking to a friend, Barry Friedman, who used to open for Robin a lot, and they were talking about how, obviously how brilliant he was and how different he was from all the other celebrities that they would open for. That, if they were opening for Billy Crystal at 9:06, on Tuesday night, it would be the same joke that was at 9:06 on Wednesday night, and but one of the things they mentioned is he's got this massive. He's brilliant as an improviser. He's brilliant at working at what's in front of him, but he's also got this huge file. Like, he's got a massive, of stuff that he's written, and whatever comes up in the conversation, he's going into that file and pulling out. And you can kind of see that on a lot of the television, a lot of the TV stuff of Robin, which is incredible and worth looking up as well. Davina mentioned it's good to see you, Davina. I owe you an email as well. But points out she loves Jonathan Winters. Yeah, absolutely. Just a legend. And it is interesting, some of these people that were so far ahead of their time that they've kind of gotten plastered over by the culture, but you see them now. And Ernie Kovacs is another one who you kind of remind me of in some ways. Very, again, look him up, very visual early television guy doing these insane sight gags and using music and images in really unpredictable ways. It was unlike anything else that was going on. And had this huge influence on everybody downstream that you've heard of, but the culture never quite caught up to him where he, was there. But no, that's.
I highly recommend anybody in entertainment should look up Kovacs. There's I think it's a 5 DVD set that they put out several years ago of the shows, and it's brilliant. I highly recommend it, and you could probably find it on Amazon or eBay still.
I don't know. Yeah, it was. And I think some of it's on YouTube as well. And it was my introduction to it. It was my dad got that VHF set when it was VHS, and we were watching those together. But I don't know if it was, you might have told me this because we might have been talking about Kovacs, and I love this. There's this very famous bit he does that's an Nairobi trio, and it's these 3 characters that are in these gorilla masks, and they're doing, it's impossible to describe. You got to watch it, but it's the reactions on their face and the timing, and you get all these laughs out of just the rhythm of what's happening, again, which reminds me of you. And I don't know if it was you who told me this, but somebody said that when he was doing it live, he would have these, and he loved it, these A-list celebrities, Jack Lemmon, or, that were under the mask and nobody knew about it. And that was the inside joke for the people on the stage, was that, oh, that's Sammy Davis Jr. or that's whoever.
Yeah, that might have been me, because, I have told that story. Kovacs was he was brilliant. He was so far ahead of his time, and he, sadly, he lost his life in a car accident at a young age. But his stuff still holds up. It still holds up.
Yeah. So we've got Winters, we've got Kovacs. Anybody else on the Tony Brent you must watch this comedy list?
From the old days.
From any day, anybody that you think like, oh, this is somebody to look at. This is somebody who, cool. No, though two are plenty. Like, so
right.
That's great, and those are two big ones too.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of so many comedians. And I like to look at. It's funny to look at guys who take Stephen Wright, for instance. Stephen Wright has never changed his character. He was doing the exact same character when he was like in his 20s. There's an old video of it. There's a video on Boston comics, because a huge amount of famous comedians came out of Boston in like the 70s and 80s, and he was one of them. And it's so funny because I'm watching this video, and I can't remember Dennis. I don't think Dennis Miller, but Dennis, what's his name? Does a lot of acting now.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue, and at 3 a.m. I will text you with the name. But yeah. Not Dennis Leary.
Dennis Leary.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. But there's a whole bunch of guys that came out of Boston that made it. And I'm watching it, and it's like a 21-year-old Stephen Wright, still had hair, but he's exact same deadpan delivery as he has now. And I'm like, who discovers that young?
Yeah, their voice.
And does it for the next, 40 years?
Wow.
However long he's been around, it's like, I'm just amazed at someone who can realize who they are that early, because it took me a long, long time.
And you're one of the most self-aware that I've seen of like comedy magicians, you know, and we're seeing, it's interesting because there is a new there was kind of this period of, I don't know, this may not be something that's even, but there was this period of where magic has always been this weird, you know, this weird offshoot of the variety arts where it's the only form where you could, if you wanted to, go buy an act. And when you went and bought that act, there'd be this thing that said patter that was, here's exactly what you say during the trick, and you don't have to think. And that, for some reason, culturally, we've accepted that for so long. And I'm starting to see more and more, and maybe this happens every generation, but I'm starting to see more and more younger comic magicians. Ryan Kane just wrote a great book called Out of Stock for magicians on how to replace the stock lines in an act, like how to take out that stuff and, you know, write your own thing there. And he's got this very specific process to go through and questions to ask, and it's incredible. But guys like him, Nick DeFott, like, that are saying, no, we've got this, you know, this original voice is as important in this art form as it is in everything else. And I think you're proof of that when people see your show, and it's no accident that you've been working every frickin' night since 2000 performing this show. So yeah, absolutely. So let's talk some about the characters, because that does differentiate you. I don't think there's anybody else doing what you're doing in terms of mixing magic and comedy and sort of impressions. Like I don't want people to think that they're going to come in and watch like a 1960s, you know, but Jack Nicholson appears in the show, and it's fantastic, and it's hilarious, and it's in just the right kind of like seasoning, like a little bit of pepper. But what started you on the characters? How do they fit in? How do you see them working in the show?
Well, the characters are the impressions, which the impressions have come to be known in business. What I do is micro impressions. That's what Dana Carvey calls them. And it's basically just a line or two or whatever, or maybe even a word, where you're just throwing a little bit, how do I will? Or just a little something, a little taste of something, instead of coming out and, like you said, trying to do
6 minutes as right, yeah.
6-minute Richard Nixon, Rich Little thing. Yeah. I was doing those in high school. I was imitating Steve Martin, Clint Eastwood, John Wayne. This is dating me here, I know. Johnny Carson. I was doing all those impressions in high school. And people would pull me. In a small town, everybody just drives around. That's what you do. You drive around the court square, or you drive through Sonic 17 times a night. But I would have friends flag me down so I could do impressions for them. And so I was doing that in high school.
Wow.
And I didn't consciously put them in the show. They just sort of happened. And it's like, and a kid told me 5 or 6 years ago, why do you do all those funny voices? And I was like, you know, I'm not even aware that I do it. I wasn't even aware, but I guess I do it all the time. So it was just something that I did. And so I thought it would be funny to do them, you know, I just do them. And so it wasn't something I sat down and wrote and decided, hey, I'm going to come on, let that character. I guess I just randomly switched, voices when I'm talking.
Is that kind of your...
Maybe I'm schizophrenic. I don't know.
Who knows?
But yeah, it's just something I did. And so in the show, going back to even when I was doing birthday parties back in the 80s, I was doing little voices then. I told Wayne Dobson about this. Wayne, for those of you who don't know, used to do this great bit where he was throwing his voice like a ventriloquist to people on stage. And I said, that's so brilliant. I wish I'd come up with that. I was doing it, but not like he did it.
Yeah.
But even back in the 80s, I would say to a kid at a birthday party, you want to hold that?
Yes.
And I just,
Yes.
and just do the kids, little things like that.
Yeah.
I was doing it. I remember I did a sponge balls, chopped cup, and then I would be the kid's voice, as if I'm talking to the kid. And so, but he took it to another level. But anyway, I just say that to say the voices I was already doing, and that led to the characters, I think.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I love Mitzi's description of the show as the one man cast of thousands. I think is perfect. And that's what No, well, I just upped your cast. Which is
even funnier.
Yeah.
Yeah, she came up with that I don't know, years ago, and then it sort of stuck.
It's great, and and like you say, it's in the moment. It's reacting perfectly. Well, hey Tony, this is awesome. We've only got a couple more minutes left, so I thought it'd be great to talk about what's coming up on the 13th and the 20th. What kind of changes have you made to the show, and what can people expect when they come out to experience it?
Well, the show's going to be radically different. Let me say that first of all. Because of COVID and all the restrictions that we have as far as staying socially distancing, I won't be bringing anyone on stage. And the interaction will be more of a group type thing. There will be individual interaction, but it won't be the way it used to be. My show, when I sat down and I started thinking about it, I had so much touchy-feely, let's hug, I'm hugging men. There's so much stuff that was in my show that I can't do anymore. And so the show is going to have a different feel. I am going to do some voices. I'm not going to do characters the way I used to with wigs and those type of pieces. In fact, we're going to have a set that looks like a living room.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so we've been doing a lot of shopping for set pieces. We're taking a lot of those pieces over there tomorrow, where there's some already there. We have a new camera installed that will zoom onto a close-up table, which will allow me to do a lot more close-up magic than we were able to do before. We had a camera before, but it wasn't able to zoom, so we ran out of camera that could zoom. I'm basically basing this new show off of, are you ready for it?
Yeah, I'm excited.
You Bet Your Life.
Oh, I love it.
Groucho Marx. I'm a big fan of Groucho Marx. And You Bet Your Life was created for him to give him an outlet to improv. That was the entire reason that show was created. And so I took the idea of a game show somewhat format, and I've added a lot of mentalism to it. So there'll be a lot of questions asked of the audience, but they'll be funny questions. They won't necessarily be, think of a number, between 1 and 100 kind of thing. There'll be, the questions will be humorous, and there'll be a lot of improvising between me and the audience that hopefully is going to be really funny.
It's gonna be. That sounds amazing. And as soon as you said I'm a big Groucho Marx fan, I was like, yeah, that does not surprise me at all. We did have a quick question from Davina. She's asking. She might not have heard earlier, but have you performed in any Fringe fests?
No, I have not. I did think about it a few years ago, auditioning for Fringe, but I've just been so busy.
I I was gonna
You
say,
know,
were you like, hey, I'm doing 10 shows a week. Let me write something completely
yeah,
different and do another 40 shows in 3 weeks. But I understand where the question's coming from, because you do have this very funny, very high energy, very original voiced show that, yeah, would be great for that. But you're already so successful that, yeah, I completely
yeah. I
understand
mean,
that.
I love the idea of writing a show for Fringe. That would be the reason to do it. Would be the challenge of trying to write something, because I love the Fringe shows. Uh, but I also do an anti-bullying show that I do in the spring, closely tied in with the Orlando Repertory Theater, and so I already do that every year, and I've done some arts stuff through them at other places, like the Dr. Phillips Center and places like that. So,
Yeah.
you know,
And something to mention for those who don't know you, one of the things, so you're very busy with this huge business that is the own show, but you're also regularly, you're performing pre-COVID in the rooms with kids at in the hospitals. Post-COVID, you've been there on Zoom creating magic and comedy when they're going through a rough time. And so it's really awesome that you're using your gifts and ways for and that the art show you're doing, it's an art show, but it's also about helping kids out with this really important issue. So that's awesome, Tony. That's fantastic. Well, cool. Well, the new show sounds incredible. I can't wait to see it. Folks can go. It's going to be March 13th is a Saturday at 6 p.m. March 20th at 6 p.m. Includes, as always, all the pizza you can eat, all the salad. It's awesome. It's been so great being here with you, Tony. I'm gonna plug one quick thing, and then we'll give them some more info on your show, and we will head out. Tony, it's been incredible. Thank you so much for your time. This will be up on Facebook, and we'll also send you a recording to use as well. Real quick, if folks would like to see some virtual magic, I will be at the Magic Castle virtually. It's the only time you go to the Magic Castle and not wear pants. Saturday night, that's going to be 10 p.m. New York time, 7 p.m. LA time. But more importantly, the man of the hour, you can catch Tony again March 13th, March 20th, 6 p.m. All new show. It's going to be hilarious, and we can't wait for you guys to be a part of it. Have a great night, everyone. Bye for now.